Well, welcome everyone. It's that time again. Joining us here for the Bear Analytics Event Insight Series webinar. We're very happy to have a special guest today. My name is Eric Missick, and also joined by Joe Colangelo. But we have our special guest is Rachel Wimberly from Tarsus, US. She's the Executive Vice President of Business Development there. And she's going to help us understand not just today, not just tomorrow, but what's the future of this industry that we're in, the events industry, and we're going to talk through that today. We're excited about the interview with her. So as always, feel free, any questions that you have throughout today's webinar session, feel free to put those in the question box, in the chat box there. We'll get through them throughout the discussion to make sure we bring up with Rachel and she answers all your pressing questions about the future as she looks into her figurative crystal ball there. But before we begin and we pass it over to Joe, we did want to make sure you all had the chance to fill out our Return to Live Events survey. So I'll put that in the chat box there, that link to that survey. We're going to have the results coming out early part of July to all the respondents and really the entire industry, talking specifically about what folks are seeing as they go back to live. So we'll shoot that link here over to you all in a second. If you definitely fill it out, you have a chance to win a $100 Amazon gift card. So who doesn't love that? All right, great. So with that, we'll turn it over to Joe, who's going to start the interview with Rachel.
Thanks very much, Eric. And as always, please feel free to light up the chat or the questions with any of your questions. So first and foremost, I don't think there's a lot of folks on this call that don't know who you are, Rachel, but give us a little bit of your background and your role at Tarsus.
Hey, Joe. Hey, Eric. So happy to be here with the both of you guys, and thank you for having me. Most people know me from running TSNN, Trade Show News Network, for the past dozen years or so. So that's where, I kind of got more well-known in the industry and still oversee that brand. But about 3 years ago, I took on a role as Executive Vice President of Business Development at Tarsus Group US, also running the mergers and acquisitions here in North America overall. So basically what that means is I get to go shopping for trade shows, and it's been fun so far. And we've made about 6-7 acquisitions in the last 2 years or so, believe it or not. And we're actively looking for more companies to partner with.
So appreciate that background. I love the concept of I get to go shopping. So let's extend that analogy or that metaphor. This industry's gone through quite a bit in the last 2 years. What is that perhaps shopping list, or how have things changed today versus at this point last year? What have been your learnings, kind of being the tip of the spear of the event industry internationally for the last year or so?
Well, I mean, between last year and this year, at this time is night and day, really. I mean, our industry, our company is based in London, but we have about 190 events, globally in 19 countries. So as, COVID has evolved, for everyone, we've seen a big changes, throughout our portfolio globally, in July, interestingly, for us, a big part of our portfolio is in China, so when everything first hit in 2020, in January 2020, China closed down, but by July 2020, China was back up, and all of our shows were live there. And then obviously the US, and everywhere else in the world for the most part was closed down for a while then. Then shows started coming back, live. We ran one actually in February 21 alongside Magic and the Win show, which is a Clarion show, down in Orlando as kind of a test case. And we actually tested 3,500 people on site to prove, that you could run a show safely at that time. And that kickstarted really our events here in the US and North America going back live. And by about, April, May, June, and then especially going in July, we had most of our events going back live. But still between then and now has been night and day, on the number of exhibitors, the number of attendees, the energy on the show floor, is much higher. There's less of a threat, of COVID, overall. So it's just a different dynamic.
And so if we're gonna, again, now let's get the crystal ball out. you're on the webinar a year from now, what do you think the next year, as we are about to kick off summer here, what do things look like for the next year heading into next summer for the industry? What are some of the trends that you expect to emerge during that time period?
Well, as far as the overall business, I think, I just was at ECEF and a lot of people were talking about, first, second quarter of 2023, they're hoping that they'll see their full businesses come back, and that's as far as, revenues and looking at shows, et cetera. What shows may look like then, it'll be interesting because it's always been size, for many, many years. We had the recession, everybody said quality versus quantity. It's not about the size. And then the shows, that kind of faded away. Shows got super big again. Everybody said, great, shows are big. And, we all touted those numbers. And then, now that shows are a bit smaller again, we'll see what happens, because, marketing dollars, have been shifted other places. Booth sizes have been downsized. Some businesses have gone out of business, so there's a lot of factors involved, in headwinds on getting the show floors back, but do they really need to be that big if we've got the right people coming? I don't think so.
So in terms of things that could be headwinds, we hear, pretty much anytime you turn on the news nowadays, you hear kind of things around supply chain, inflation, and challenges around finding the right people. If you could kind of rank order them as to what you're seeing and hearing in the events industry, which ones of those are perhaps already having the biggest impact or will going forward in the next, again, kind of year or so?
Well, I think it's really two-part. I think for a while there's been the recruitment staffing issue. I mean, we really as an industry had an issue with it pre-COVID. There's not a lot, and very few, I'll say, university programs, for example, that focus in on the trade show industry, and have that, root into a career path in our industry. And that's been a challenge for a really long time. I think that on top of that, our industry being closed down basically for quite a while here in the US, and a lot, we had a lot of people leaving our industry and going to others, a lot of great people who I'm extremely sad that are not in our industry anymore, and then it's like, well, if you're coming out of college and, you're looking at what the career path is going to be, and events have been closed down for a while, well, there's a little bit of risk there now, right? So you're like, well, should I get into that or not? So I not so jokingly say, I think we need to bring the sexy back to the trade show industry. We need as an industry to really start focusing on truly creating, programs that reach into the schools, getting a higher profile for our industry, overall, and creating more of an excitement around a career in this great industry that we all love. So that's number one. Number two, sorry, the second part of that would be on supply, because it's a big question on supply chain inflation. I think that, there's been the pressure there, but I think that the going forward, particularly with gas prices and such, transportation for exhibits, to get exhibits on site, all, the labor costs alone, all of that, I think is going to put, some pressure on the industry, but I don't think any of it's insurmountable. It's just planning for it, properly and figuring out how to, risk, kind of diversify that risk a bit.
So I appreciate those comments, Rachel. So let's unpack kind of your first bullet point there on staffing, because I think you brought up a really interesting point about, where's the so the net kind of overall number due to the pandemic went down, but then kind of the farm system, where are we getting the future generation of the industry maybe isn't as robust as it needs to be. In that case, when you're flying all over looking to acquire event assets, how much is the talent then a portion of that financial, kind of, or that strategic decision? And would you say it's maybe more or less important than it was, 2 or 3 years ago?
I think it's hugely important, and probably more, particularly, when we're the heads of these companies often are honestly brilliant entrepreneurs. They've tapped into a business in a sector that they've grown, successfully, and that's honestly why we partnered with them, is to be able to help take that next level. But those entrepreneurs, they're bringing in fresh ideas. A lot of them, are doing different things that, traditionally as an industry, maybe we didn't do. 2 companies that we bought recently are not traditional trade show companies. One is, called Health Connect Partners, and it's really a reverse, trade show and matchmaking type event, in the hospital space. And he's doing some amazing things. Quite frankly, while a lot of the events are going back live, he's figured out how to do a very successful live model, which he's brought his shows back live. But he's also learned during the pandemic that he had an audience. The hospitals, as you can imagine, are extraordinarily busy in the best of times, and even more so because they've got a lot of the pressures we do on staffing, et cetera. Now, he's figured out a virtual component to his shows that he is going forward with as part of his overall business now. And the second entity that we bought that came in with a very strong, leader also is in the discovery show space of retail and wellness, nutrition, and health. And it's a very high-end show for buyers and sellers to meet, more like on a very big product showcase type of thing, rather than a traditional, just booth, show floor type thing. And they also have a virtual program that they're running year round, that will remain part of their program as they're back to live as well.
So that's interesting. So, you kind of have the live model and the virtual model. You're stepping over both sides of the aisle there with these 2 new recent acquisitions. For those that are on the call, what are maybe some emerging trends that you think event organizers need to be thinking about right now for the next 2, 3, 4 years, putting that forecast out a little bit farther? Because we oftentimes hear, how much virtual should we do, right? I think we learned a big lesson the last 2 years. Now we're starting to see people, and it sounds like you're, again, on the front lines of this, really take strategic and tailored approaches as to where they're deploying it. But what else, other than maybe the live versus virtual kind of larger umbrellas, what are maybe some other trends that you're seeing emerge that you expect event organizers to adopt in again, the next, let's call it, half decade?
Well, that's a big old crystal ball now, Joe. But I'll do my best on it. Not to jump off virtual too soon, because one point I did want to make on that I think that honestly you all would be very helpful with as well with what you do, is a lot of these virtual event audiences, we're quite big, compared to the live audiences. And the feedback that I talked to so many people in the past, 2 years that ran virtual events, and they saw a lot of people on those events that had never been to their show, or they also had a lot bigger reach internationally, so I think that the challenge is, and it's a good challenge, is converting those people to live attendees and potential sponsors as well, because there certainly were others tuning in. So I think that our industry shouldn't what do they call it, jump the shark too soon on looking at virtual and the benefits that came out of it, and can still continue to be part of a live event program. So that's my 2 cents on that. As far as trends, going out, there's so much that's happened in the last 2.5 years besides just COVID, because the last 2.5 years have happened in life in general, and part of that is the TikTok culture, I'll call it, is front and center. It's really big. Brands are doing extremely, well on TikTok. And the thing about something like TikTok is it's fun, and it's great for brand activations, so I think as an industry for a really long time, we keep talking about having more of a fun, interactive, engaging environment, at shows. And I think that we need to stop talking about it and really, put the effort where it needs to be on helping make that happen. One great program I heard about recently at ECEF was the SHOT Show, works with a company called Convex, and they put on an exhibitor academy, and they have, people come in and lead that on how to, create more engaging booth experiences. And then they also hired someone named Robin Davis, who actually gave one-on-one interviews for a select group of exhibitors to talk through how they could better engage attendees and create a more exciting, booth experience. I think that that is key, going forward.
So there's a lot to.
Oh,
we got one?
We do have a question. Yeah, we had a question that came in. We actually have 2 questions now. They're piling in. So the first one, I think, Rachel, you kind of alluded to this, but maybe, if you could be a little more direct towards this question is, we're an association and produced a hybrid event in 2022, a live educational conference with exhibition, plus a virtual education only, no exhibits event. Does that approach make sense going forward? And this gentleman, it's Randy Bowler from Critical Care Nurses, so in the medical space.
Hey, Randy. I think that it depends on your audience. I think with medical, especially, we have a medical division with 5 brands in it, and they've found a lot of success on the virtual side, in the last couple of years, and intends to keep that component as part of their events, as well. That I think it lends itself, to very good education, continuing, credit education, and also networking, so I think it's so dependent, your audience will tell you, on whether they want to keep doing, virtual or not, along with live. And I think that there are ways, to create, things for, because the complaint has been, where do we make the money off of virtual? But I think that there are good creative ways, to look at, how you could create sponsorships within the virtual environment, that can work, but again, that's, just kind of thinking out the box a little bit and making sure that you're just in tune with your community on both sides. So my quick answer is, Randy, yes, I think it works with the right audience, and again, you'll know if it's not, because people just won't come to the virtual.
Makes sense. Thanks, Rachel. The other one is more of a statement, I'd say, regarding how to differentiate your event. So the attendee experience, being more experiential, providing high-level customer service, more ways to connect by getting more info from the event on the attendees. So I think it's just, how do we make sure that it's, it's personalized, and then also getting the right connections made on site.
Mm-hmm. I think there's been some great, sorry.
Go ahead, Rachel. Sorry, go ahead.
I think that there's been some great ways that that's been done in the past that I'd like to see, more widespread. I mean, there's the idea of persona marketing. It is creating, looking at your, attendee side and even exhibitor side, and breaking, them up into, a finite amount of, like, who are the people coming to your event, and then creating, marketing, around, and engagement opportunities around those people. So whether it's like, women leadership in the robotics space, or young, young up and comers in, the manufacturing space, or whatever. I mean, it's like creating those experiences on site, and making sure that you're getting those people connected on site that are actually coming to your show, and not trying to do the one size fits all.
Yeah, I think that's a hugely valuable point, because the folks are used to having better discovery experiences when they go in to look at content or their own personal experiences. And I think some of the learnings from the last 2 years on the virtual front is being able to more easily discover what content, and now flip that on its head, putting the event organizer in the driver's seat to go ahead and actually say, here's the content that we think is going to most resonate with you, or here are the experiences on the show floor that we think you're going to be the most excited about, kind of going to the next level, other than here's the keynote, here's the first night party, all that kind of stuff, but really getting, I think, more tailored. Is at least an emerging trend that we're seeing, a request that we're seeing on our side from our clients. They consistently want to push the envelope on how can we drive more of the attendee expectation, I guess is probably the best way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, there's the tech exists, for that to happen, and and if you're collecting the right data points, and then there's no reason why not. I'd even take it, another level is because I think there's the show, but I think it would be kind of fun if, like, let's say you're going to McCormick Place in Chicago, and there's a little part in the registration form that says, are you a foodie, are you a sporty, or are you a shopper, whatever the case may be, and you mark off whatever, and then you get some kind of fun ideas of things to do in the area that actually are geared towards your interests, beyond going to the show, because everybody loves to see, what's around and fun things to do also. So if you can be the person to provide that, and it's a great sponsorship opportunity as well, so I think that we just need to, again, not look at the attendees, as one size fits all, and we've got the tools, and personalized marketing is I think key to really engaging people in a much more creative and fun and educational way for them.
And so to that effect, how it sounds like, and I'm not trying to speak for you here, but it sounds like you're saying that some of these newer sponsorship ideas is potentially one of the better vehicles to growing revenue in, let's call it, the short to medium term, as live events try to come back full force from a revenue standpoint. Is that it? It sounds like you agree with that statement. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can always, sell a sponsor on, like a banner sign or, or something, but I think that, I know, because we're getting the same kind of questions, from our clientele, they're looking for, they want to be able to touch the attendee in some way, shape, or form. So, creating fun experiences for them to be able to sponsor, or something unique, whether it's a social media scavenger hunt, or I don't know. I mean, gamification, I think, on trade shows, I hope, is going to gain traction, again, and get much bigger than it was coming into the pandemic. There are a lot of great sponsorship opportunities, and more creative ones than I think that have been traditionally sold in the past. And those are good for revenue.
And so compared to, I think, some of your earlier comments was, maybe the show floors are going to, from a size standpoint, are going to struggle a little bit. It sounds like you're a little bit more bullish on the sponsorship revenue vertical. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, for example, one of our shows next week, that was one of the ones that we partnered with and acquired in December. It's called Founder May. That's the one in New York. Their biggest sponsor, or one of their biggest sponsors, is TikTok. And TikTok is basically coming on site, and because it's all discovery brands, and again, the wellness, nutrition, and beauty space, they will be able to meet with consultants from TikTok about how to increase their brand awareness, within that platform. So that's just a great, thing for them to be able, to do as part of that show, and a great sponsorship, opportunity for the show itself.
Yeah, that's really cool to hear that use case. So I think everyone right now just wrote down, try to get TikTok as a sponsor. That's probably the number one takeaway right there.
Exactly. Yeah. But there's things, like that. I mean, but you don't have to have TikTok as a sponsor. You could go, well, who are the influencers within my space? There's always an influencer in every single space. I don't care whether it's dairy, manufacturing, aviation, or beauty. It doesn't matter. There's influencers in every single sector. And they're there. You just have to pay attention to where they are, and find them. And and you may have somebody, within the dairy industry who's killing it on TikTok or on another social media platform, and Twitter. Well, get them on site. To consider sponsoring them to come on site and be able to meet with people and talk about, like, how to heighten their brand awareness on social media. It's just looking at it a different way, maybe, and also recognizing where the future generations are right now. Like, where do they live?
So let's take that last point. We're rounding out the half an hour here. This has been a great conversation. You mentioned earlier we got to get more younger folks in the education pipeline into the events industry. What's your sales pitch for the events industry to those folks?
Wow, that's a good question. I'm so extraordinarily passionate about this industry, and absolutely have loved the past 16, 17 years I've spent in it. But I think that if you want to be able to be in an industry with great people, you want to learn, about so many different, companies and new products, and really, be able to embrace, the face-to-face, industry and events overall, then, the trade show industry really can't be beat. That energy of creating this whole universe, in a 3-4 day span of time, and watching, sometimes tens of thousands of people, go and do business, on the show floor, that then is, gone 3 or 4 days later, I think is really an amazing industry to be in.
Well, Rachel, thank you very much. This has been an awesome time. As usual, you brought the noise. Thank you for being such a great evangelist to the industry and for your insights today. And just as we round out this half an hour, we're running it back with Vinu from Eva Reg next week. And then we have the always awesome Dana Fraker Duty at the end of the month from Juno. You heard from Eric. If you wanted to reach out to him to know how to grow your event on the audience or the exhibitor side, please don't hesitate to reach out. And lastly, I think what's still in the chat, is that right, Eric? A return to live survey.
Yeah.
I think last week we said last chance, but this is literally the last chance because we're crunching the numbers starting at on Friday. So please fill out the survey. You get the results by filling out the survey, not just the crack at the $100 gift card. So a little bit of cash, a little bit of insights, and we'll go from there.
Absolutely. Thanks so much again, Rachel, for
Thank
everything
Thank
today.
you very much.
Have a good
And,
one. Bye, everybody.
Talk to everybody soon. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Bye-bye.